Welcome back to a special edition of Taking Down Trump. I'm your host, Tristan Snell. As this is being released, I am just walking off the stage at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. Really amazing opportunity. I'm so glad that they reached out to me to share a little bit about exactly what Donald Trump did to his victims in the Trump University scam and what it tells America about Donald Trump. You'd think that we already knew everything about Donald Trump. And it's not like the Trump University story hasn't been out there for a while, but I think it bears repeating, it bears emphasizing. I think the victims' stories are something that still need to be told even more than they already have been. And so that's more of what I'm endeavoring to do right now. I had an opportunity to talk about this a little bit in my speech at the convention just now, but I'm using this as an opportunity to elaborate more on exactly what these victims went through, who they were, why did they believe in Donald Trump to begin with. We can start there. Okay, these were folks that were believers in Donald Trump. And this was pre-political Trump, okay? They're already by kind of obviously the 2010, 2011, 2012 timeframe, he was doing the whole birtherism thing. Most of the Trump University activity was between 2007 and 2010. This is really pre-political Trump. This is reality show Trump. It's Celebrity Apprentice and Apprentice Trump. It's the you're fired Trump. That image that was projected into America's living rooms for years, every week, that is the image that people were believing in when they were believing in Donald Trump. They saw him as this brash, take no prisoners, no nonsense business guy that was supposedly a billionaire, supposedly this big real estate mogul. So I interviewed over 100 of these victims as part of the investigation into Trump University at the New York Attorney General's office. And I heard a lot of the same things over and over and over again. I'm going to try to relay what those experiences were. But people really say, they specifically said that they trusted him, that they believed in him, that they respected him. They didn't use this word, but I would actually go so far as to say a lot of them idolized him. And why did they do that? Because they had this image of him being kind of a personification of the American dream, of somebody who had worked hard and maybe didn't play by all the rules. Maybe he broke a few, but sometimes Americans like that, a sort of, roguish element to business or to other aspects of life. I think that people liked that. They liked the fact that he wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. They liked the fact that he was tough talking. This image that he portrayed, or that was portrayed of him by the producers of those shows, in particular Mark Burnett, that image, that's what they really believed in. And they thought that he was going to help them get their own slice of the American dream. Remember back to what time period we're talking about here. This was 2007 to 2010. It was during the crash. Okay, these were folks that had lost a lot of their life savings. If they did have some 401k or an IRA or something like that, that had lost a lot of value. People had lost a lot of their home value if they owned a home. Trump University were specifically targeting folks, and this is where it really just becomes, the more you learn about this, the more you realize how diabolical it was. They were specifically targeting folks who were middle-aged and middle income. They were going after folks and then preying on their economic insecurities, especially during that time period. These were folks who, they were specifically going after folks that were 45 to 65 years old and were making anywhere from like $35,000 to $70,000 a year. And the very first thing that they would do with these folks when they got them into a hotel ballroom, which is where all these classes were held, was to talk about how they weren't going to have enough money to retire, that they were going to be dependent on family members and on charity. They went in and scared the crap out of them. There's a term for all of this in the hard pressure, high pressure sales world. They call it FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And it was very, very much part of the Trump University playbook. These were not real estate experts, most of them, hardly any of them were. Even the ones that were, two of them had actually gone into personal bankruptcy trying to invest in real estate. But let's just put that aside for now. The instructors that they got were actually salesmen. They were high pressure salesmen who were used to doing these like wealth creation seminars and having it be a big upsell. And I'm going to walk through a little bit more about that in a minute. But who were these victims? So they had this belief in Donald Trump. Let's not make the mistake of thinking to ourselves, oh, that would never be me. I would never fall for that. These people must have been crazy or stupid or something. Don't, please, for the love of God, don't do that. That's not fair to them, and it's not correct. A lot of these folks were professionals. A lot of these folks were quite accomplished. They wanted something more. And who among us doesn't? Really, like there's very few of us that don't want something more. These were folks who, a lot of them had done quite well in their careers, but they wanted something more, or they wanted to have a second career. They wanted to have something else that would allow them to be their own boss, to punch their own ticket. They wanted to be able to get out there and invest in real estate and become more successful. Donald Trump was selling that dream to people. And it was all fake. The whole thing was a mirage. He dangled that dream in front of them, and then with his other hand, he picked their pockets. That's what this was all about. So the people who were at these seminars definitely ran the gamut. You had folks that were about to hit their retirement age as teachers. You had folks that were, retired police officers. You had folks that were veterans. You had folks that were moms who worked from home and were looking to get back into the workforce more as their kids got older. You had folks that had been accountants and other finance professionals who knew a thing or two about a balance sheet and how to pick investments. You had some folks that were already investing in real estate and they wanted to up their game more. These folks came to Trump University. They found out about it through direct mail pieces because these people, like I said, were targeted. There were also newspaper advertisements, radio advertisements, but the direct mail pieces were among the more prevalent ways that people had found out about this. All of the pieces were wrapping themselves in the Trump brand. There was this sort of like fake crest of the university with this like lion. All the letters would say they were from the desk of Donald J. Trump. They specifically had the Trump University offices be based out of the Trump building at 40 Wall Street in New York so that they could have that as the return address, 40 Wall Street, New York, New York. That was a very deliberate choice. Then the lies began coming in immediately. Among the more important ones was the idea that Donald Trump had supposedly handpicked, that's the word they kept using over and over again, handpicked the instructors. That was a blatant lie, as they later had to admit in the court case, because Donald Trump had not only not handpicked these instructors, he didn't know who they were. He had never met any of them. That lie was threaded through the entire experience because when these speakers would get up on stage at the sessions, they would talk about their relationship with Donald Trump. Donald Trump chose me personally. Donald Trump sent me here to be with you today. I was just meeting with Donald Trump. All of those were lies, all of them. But it led to this feeling that like, oh, I'm working with one of Trump's guys. These are guys who maybe would have been on The Apprentice. We just didn't get to see them, right? But that was part of the lie that they were selling, was that somehow these were Trump's guys. Like, I'm going to get trained by the best. These are, Trump trained them and they're going to train me. Oh, it's almost like I'm getting to work with him myself. People literally told me that. That was part of the charm. That was part of the con that people were falling for here. So just imagine all of this. Then you're going into a hotel ballroom. The first thing that they do is they dim the lights and play the Money, 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 Money song, which is actually For the Love of Money by the OJs. It is the theme song that many of you probably remember being used on The Apprentice and The Celebrity Apprentice. So they were going in hard on that. They were almost trying to have this be a traveling roadshow extension of the television show, right? Where now you got to be on the show. That was a lot of the appeal, right? People were seeing him on TV all the time. He's this big celebrity, and now they were going to get to be part of the show themselves. There's an enormous appeal to that was very, very convincing for a lot of people. Then you've got somebody come up on stage and talk about their connection to Donald Trump, that Donald Trump chose them to be there, that he was sent there by Trump. And then they're talking about all of their success, where these people are running around showing off their suits, showing off their watches, bragging about them being Rolexes, talking about their supposedly great house and great cars and all of the successful investments that they've made. As far as anyone can tell, all of that was garbage. That was a bunch of bullshit. But then they were contrasting that with, you're going to die in poverty. That's basically what they were telling people. They were telling people, you're not going to make it. We need to help you because you're not going to make it. I'm making it. I'm a big deal. I'm some big successful real estate investor. Poor you, you're going to amount to nothing, but I'm here to help you. That was the high pressure tactic the whole way through, was to basically draw these very stark dichotomies between successful Trump things and unsuccessful you if you don't go along with the successful Trump thing. So we need to have you sign up to be part of this Trump family. Otherwise, you're going to be poor and broke, and your life's not going to turn out the way that you want. That was what they did the whole way through, over and over and over again. So they came to this hotel ballroom. It was about an hour and a half session. This was actually free. It was meant to be an upsell, and that was perfectly fine. There's nothing illegal about this part of it. It was a preview session. They're trying to get people to sign up for a 3-day, $1,500 seminar that then would be held within the next couple of weeks in that same locality. The people I interviewed were all taking these classes in New York or upstate New York, sometimes out in Long Island, but they were all in New York State. But then that's where things got worse. So people go into these 3-day seminars. They were told that the 3-day seminar would teach them everything they needed to know about investing in real estate. They'd show up to the 3-day seminar, and lo and behold, now they're being told, oh, you can't go out there yet. You're not ready. You need a mentor. You need all of these other programs. The entire thing was a bait and switch. So they would get to the 3-day program, and then they'd be told, you can't do this yet. You need to do these other things first. They would move the goalposts on them and tell them, hey, you're not ready. We need to get you trained up more. You need all of these other programs. If you try right now, you're going to fail. They would literally tell people that. So they signed up, paid the $1,500, and then they're told, nope, you can't do that. That's not going to work for you. And then if people would say that they didn't want to sign up for these programs, they would basically get pushed out. They were told, you're a loser. You're not going to amount to anything. You should go home now. We don't want quitters here. We want winners. Are you a quitter or are you a winner? That's how they would divide people up. They would do a trick that was especially diabolical. They would try to tell people, hey, during the first break, during this 3-day seminar, we're going to coach you on how to call up your credit card companies and get your credit limits increased. This was supposedly to build up their negotiating skills, right? The script that they were given to do so literally told these people to lie to their credit card companies by claiming income that they did not yet have. So that's fun too. But they were coaching people to commit the exact same kind of fraud that Donald Trump committed at a much, much greater scale, right? Because the $464 million civil fraud case that the New York AG's office is currently involved in with Donald Trump was Trump overstating the value of his assets so that he could get more cash in the form of debt from banks. And that's literally what they were coaching the Trump University victims to do. Go to your credit card company, claim that you've got assets you don't have, and they're going to give you a bunch of cash to play with as debt. Same thing, just at a much bigger scale. So these folks would then suddenly come out with tens of thousands of dollars worth of additional credit limits. Lo and behold, a couple of days later, when it came time to tell people about these Trump elite mentorship programs that cost anywhere from $10,000 to $35,000, if people tried to claim, I can't afford that, they'd turn to them and say, but didn't you just get an extra $25,000 in credit from your credit cards? You can put it all on that. It's an investment in yourself. So the whole thing was designed to basically pry open this credit, this debt that people would take out and then spend on the Trump University programs. It had nothing to do with negotiating or any bullshit like that. That was all a ploy. Again, it was all just another lie, another bait and switch to get people to do what they wanted them to do, which was to spend a bunch of money that they didn't have on programs that they didn't need and were actually worthless. So at what point were they all going to be told anything about any of this stuff? A lot of it was just a lot of other bullshit and lies, like, oh, they were saying price per square foot, that's Donald Trump's unit of measurement. It's like, no, that's actually a unit common to real estate overall, but never mind that. What were they being told? They were being told how to invest in or try to invest in properties that were underwater or about to be foreclosed upon. In other words, let's go find people that are really hurting during the crash and try to buy their houses out from under them with high pressure sales tactics for cheap, and then turn around and flip them. In some cases, doing things like a dual closing and things like that are actually illegal in a lot of states. Many of the tactics that they were supposedly trying to teach people were things that were illegal in many of the states in which these things were being taught. But that's a totally different story. But a lot of it was around, we're going to give you all this special access, special training. We're going to take care of you. The mentorship programs in particular were about this. You're going to have a power team. You're going to have a membership with us for lifetime or for at least a year, where we're going to be available for you 24/7. You're going to have a mentor who's going to walk you through your first couple of deals. You're going to make your money back, the $35,000 or whatnot, within the first 90 days. That's what they would tell people. You're going to make that back on your first deal or two, and we're going to hold your hand and help you get to that point. We're going to give you special access to lenders who will give you the money to do these deals, to flip these houses, so-called hard money lenders. And then when they would actually get to these seminar sessions and be told, oh, where are my hard money lenders? How am I going to talk to these special people that only you have access to? They would give them a page that was Xeroxed from a magazine that cost like $10. And they would say, oh, there's your list of hard money lenders. It wasn't special. The whole notion that, oh, well, you just walk through this door, pay all of this money, and we're going to hook you up. We're going to give you that shortcut to the American dream that only we have access to. Does this sound familiar? This is pretty much the Donald Trump playbook in microcosm, right? His whole thing is that whole I alone can fix it. I'm the only one who can actually solve these problems. I'm the one who's going to make America great again. You just have to trust me and give me your campaign donations and give me your vote. That's the con that he's done politically. But he did this as a consumer con, perhaps most famously with Trump University, did it in other realms as well. But it's the same thing. It's basically, believe in me and I'm going to make things better for you. You only have to give me your credit card information and I'll take care of the rest. That's basically the con. And it worked, unfortunately. On a lot of these people, it worked. And people were paying these $10, $20, $30, $35,000 sums. And what happened to them as a result? They lost their life savings, many of them. They didn't have much money saved away. They spent it all on this. They had crushing credit card debt. Multiple different people lost their homes because of the money that they spent on Trump University, and then they couldn't get it back. They got to these mentorship programs, and it turned out the mentor really didn't know anything about real estate either, would just take them on some house showings, which, by the way, are free. Like any real estate broker will take you on house showings because they work on commission. They're not going to charge you to go look at some houses. But these people basically paid $35,000 for some house showings, a handful of phone calls that, unbeknownst to them, were actually metered out, where it was like, oh, they've got 10 minutes and they've got 6 calls and that's all they get. There was no power team. There was no access to other lenders. There was no access to other professionals. There was a number that you could call at the Trump building in New York, but it was almost never manned, or if it was by a customer rep who didn't know anything about real estate. The whole thing was bogus. There was no pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. There wasn't even a rainbow. There was nothing. So these people ended up with credit card debt, losing their home, savings being wiped out, situations where they ended up having to call 18 times, 30 times or more to try to get a refund and then still get denied, making complaints to the Better Business Bureau, to the state AG's office, to anybody that they could get their hands on, anybody that they could try to say, please, please, please help me. These people ripped me off and I don't know where to turn. Up until that point, a lot of them still believed, right? They still thought that there was going to be something for them at the end of this. But then when they realized that there wasn't, that they realized they'd been conned, so many of these people were, when they talked to me still years later, because I was talking to them in like 2011, 2012, they were mortified. They were embarrassed. A lot of people cried when they told me about all of this, or some of them even cried when I first introduced myself and said I wanted to ask them about Trump University. They would start to break down on the phone saying, like, I didn't think anyone was ever going to look into this. I didn't know that anyone was going to believe any of the things that we had to say about it. There was this belief in Donald Trump that then once dashed made them not believe in any institution, right? And I think there's also a lot of disbelief in the ability of our system to generate outcomes of justice, right? And I think the combo of those things together is just absolutely heartbreaking, that people believed in this guy that they saw be a huckster on television, and then they didn't have any belief in the power of our justice system to do anything about all of his fraud. Right. Now, in that case, they were wrong. It took many years. It took a lot longer than it should. It took a lot longer than I wish it had taken. But we did get justice for these people. We did get them their money back in the end. It took a lot of fighting. It took a lot of hard work, but we were able to get them there. There was about $42 million taken from victims in the Trump University scam. Out of that, $5 million went directly into Donald Trump's pocket as profit. Ultimately, we got a $25 million settlement from Trump that was announced in 2016 and made final in 2017. And thereby, of the people that put in claims where they put in the paperwork to get their money back, they got people who put in claims got over 90% of their money back. But again, I come back to, what does this tell us about Donald Trump? You know, when he and his people were willing to take money from, say, a mom with a kid with special needs who specifically said, I don't really want to do this program because I don't want to be away from my son because he needs medical help all the time. And one of Trump's cronies, one of his little lackeys, who still had never met Trump, said, oh, I'll be your mentor and I'll be with you every step of the way. Just sign on the dotted line right here and I'll make sure that you're taken care of. And the guy ghosts the mom, is never to be seen or heard from again. That's the kind of people that Trump University had. That was the DNA. That was the ethos. It was make a buck any which way you can. And going after these folks who didn't have a whole lot to begin with and just wanted a little something more. Going after the very people who loved and respected Donald Trump the most. Just let that sink in, because I just think people really need to understand this. These were not just random folks. These were not people who might have been Trump skeptics. These were the people who idolized Donald Trump, who believed in him the most, and he took their money. He completely conned them. It was shameless, absolutely shameless, what he did to these people. They had the most respect for him, and he had the least respect in return. He does not view his fans as people to whom he owes any respect. He views them as rubes and suckers and pawns. They are walking ATM machines. They are walking credit card numbers for him to grab at and pull away money from. That is still how he views his fans and followers and supporters today. There is no follow through. There is no fulfillment at the end of it, as you would call it in the business world. There was an email that I found during the investigation in which it was acknowledged internally at Trump University that they had what they euphemistically referred to as a fulfillment problem, namely that they were doing all these promises for what was going to happen in the mentorship programs, and then they weren't able to actually fulfill any of those promises. Donald Trump generally has a fulfillment problem, okay? And he's done this over and over again so many times that you can't actually look at this ever and say, oh, it's incompetence. He's just he is somehow incapable. He gets over his skis and he's incapable of actually following through on the promises that he makes. That's not it. It's by design. He keeps doing this over and over and over again. Okay, he goes to all of the banks and says that a property is worth 3 times what it's actually worth, 10 times what it's actually worth, 30 times what it's actually worth, just so he can get the bank to shovel a bunch of cash at him in the form of debt that he didn't deserve. Okay, they go create a new building in New York called the Trump Soho, and in order to lure people in to this building, they claim that it already has a really high occupancy rate. Oh yeah, 30% of the units have been sold, 50% of the units have been sold, 60% of the units have been sold. You're more likely to buy a unit in a building that you already think is a success. That was the thought. No, but it was all a lie. It turned out that the actual occupancy rate of the building at the time was only 15, 18%. This was a lie perpetrated by the Trumps, and it actually also involved Ivanka and Don Jr., and the Manhattan DA's office was investigating it. The people working on the case believed that it should have resulted in a criminal indictment of Don Jr. and Ivanka, and Don Sr. managed to sick one of his lawyers on the case, who threw around some campaign donation money, and voila, mysteriously, the prosecution evaporated. We don't know how, right? Come on. We know what's going on here. This is a pattern and practice of behavior. He set up a charity in the Trump Foundation and didn't actually use any of the proceeds on anything charitable. He used it to pay political donations to people he wanted to buy off, to buy a weird giant life-size painting of himself. He did things for self-aggrandizement as opposed to for actual charity. That got investigated. That got shut down, again, by the New York AG's office. These are not accidents. You add all of these things up together, and he literally takes money, especially from the people who love him most, the people who respect him most, and he's sitting there laughing all the way to the bank, cashes their checks, delivers them nothing. That is Donald Trump. That is who he is. Unfortunately, he keeps on being able to generate more people who will be marks for him, who will be suckers for him, who will believe in his lies. I do believe fervently that eventually he's going to run out of people that he can sucker, and that a lot of the people that he has suckered, even politically today, even his diehard MAGA supporters, most of them are one day going to wake up and realize that they got conned, that they were had. It's not too late. It's never too late. A lot of the folks in Trump University, it took them years. A lot of them still ended up with this belief that Trump wasn't the one who had hoodwinked him. It was the people who Trump had around him. He'd surrounded himself with bad people. This was a rationalization that they came up with in their heads to avoid the cognitive dissonance of, I got taken by my hero. But that's what people did. A lot of them did end up blaming Donald Trump. I'd say the majority of the victims that I talked to had come to blame Trump personally for the Trump University con. But I think eventually more and more people are going to realize that the loyalty, the respect, the belief, the trust, it's a one-way street with him. People may be having this trust and belief and idolization of him, and he's dangling that out there. he is offering up some special access, some special triumph, some special status, some piece of the American dream, some imagined or reimagined notion of American greatness, whatever it is that he's dangling out there. He's always billed himself as being this sort of avatar of success. That's what he's dangling out there. And that's the shiny object that he's using to hypnotize people while he reaches behind them and grabs their money, or just flat out stabs them in the back. That is Donald Trump, and I think more and more people are going to realize that over time. But that is why I think the Trump University matter resonates so much with people, is because it is in microcosm exactly what Donald Trump has been to so many people and what he is politically. It's a bunch of empty promises. It's a bunch of lies so that he can take people's money, because he's never really been able to generate much of his own. He's not a businessman. He's a fraudster. He's a con artist. He's not a successful politician. He's a fraudster. He's a con artist. This is how he's been able to stay afloat for so long. And I do believe that ultimately the final consequences and judgments are coming for him. It has taken a lot of time, but it is coming. And I think we're going to be seeing that more and more in November and into next year, even if it takes into next year and beyond for the rest of these judgments to catch up with him. They're going to catch up with him. It's just a matter of when. And that's been our show. If you've liked what you heard, make sure to follow this podcast so that you get all of the episodes automatically downloaded to your device. Make sure to follow me on Twitter and subscribe for free to my Substack at tristansnell.com. And if you want to learn more about how we prosecuted Trump University, check out my book, Taking Down Trump, which is available every place that you love to buy books. And I think it's also discounted now, so extra bonus.